Mr. Bowser.
Good evening, Dr. Johnson, members of the board, and Mr. Thurmond. And I'd like to thank all of you who were able to make it to the opening ceremony for Summer Leadership yesterday. We appreciated your attendance. This evening, we're bringing you the action item for the establishment of the charter petition for the McNair College and Career Academy. I want to share a little bit of information regarding that academy. Through the Technical College System of Georgia, Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle has provided funding for local school districts and technical colleges to partner and apply for a grant to assist in creating a college and career academy. We just heard about that grant on July the 11th, and so we had a very short period of time in which to pull the petition together. However, we have been working on this petition since last year. If the board members recall, there was an opportunity where Mr. Thurmond came to all of you asking to move ahead to apply for a grant, and that is the same grant that has been reopened for this year's cycle as well. Our partners that we're looking at right now are Georgia Piedmont Technical College and DeKalb businesses such as Georgia Power, DeKalb Fire and Rescue, Epps Aviation, Siemens, and Oglethorpe Power. Other partners will be added based on needs. The grant, which the petition is dependent, or we are dependent on having the petition approved before we can apply for the grant. If the grant is received, that would allow the district $3 million for construction costs, as well as $150,000 for planning and preparation costs. In addition to that, our superintendent has set aside $1 million on the budget that the board approved for also to be included as part of this endeavor. The site selection, Ronald McNair High School was selected due to its potential for school growth, school and community needs based on community input and research, building size and the amenities that are within that building currently, relative renovation expenses compared to new construction of a new facility, location of the school within the district, and the ability to enhance community with innovative instructional programs. The purpose of the academy is to provide quality instruction that prepares students for 21st century careers that address workforce development needs through partnerships with business, industry, and secondary and post-secondary institutions. The proposed academy would run from grades 8th through 12th, and it will accelerate students through their college and career pathways by providing innovative instructional programs that utilize dual enrollment, and work-based learning opportunities. There's some innovative and unique instructional programs that will be very specific to this academy. The proposal is to create learning communities that address local, state, and federal workforce development needs. So multiple pathways will be addressed within the following program areas. A School of Engineering containing the following pathways: architectural drawing and design, energy and power, and mechatronics. By the way, mechatronics is a combination of mechanical and electrical engineering. The School of Medicine would contain the following pathways: biotechnology research and development, health IT, and health support professionals. The School of Business and Computing would contain gaming and application development and the entrepreneurship pathways. The School of Health and Public Service would have the pathways of fire and emergency services and law enforcement. Other potential pathways: hospitality, recreation and tourism, audio-video technology and film, and aviation. Instruction that starts with 8th graders would allow accelerated focus towards post-secondary opportunities. Self-paced instruction focused on both academic and skills attainment that develop the mind and the hands. Instruction that is going to be web-based, traditional, and independent studies. Students would have an opportunity to have year-round instruction with extended hours. Class offerings for parents and community members that would lead to industry certification, technology, college credits, and associate degrees via evening classes, and that, of course, would strengthen our family engagement efforts of the district. And then finally, remediation and credit recovery opportunities through web-based, traditional, independent studies, and evening classes. This effort, this petition, would address 3 major district initiatives in Goal Area 1 with student success and with equity and access, stakeholder engagement, which would be Goal Area number 2, and Goal Area number 4, which would be internal and external communication. If this petition is approved for this academy to be established, it would also set a precedent in the metropolitan Atlanta area by being the first academy in Georgia to be established in a large urban district with a high concentration of economically disadvantaged students. So at this time, it is requested that the Board of Education approve the charter petition to establish a college and career academy for DeKalb County School District.
Moved by Mr. Mayfield, second by Mr. Campbell. Is there any discussion? Mr. Mayfield, Dr. Morley, and Mr. Orson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think this is a great opportunity for our students, and I want to thank you, Mr. Superintendent, and the staff for pulling this together. I do have a couple of questions, and I'd like just for clarification and, quite frankly, for the benefit of the public. And one point of note is, of course, that this school will be available to all of the students in DeKalb County in terms of its coverage, if you will. It's not limited to the McNair cluster. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Right. And can you tell me just what distinguishes this from the DeKalb Early College Academy and the student selection criteria by comparison?
It would be similar to that academy in the fact that it will be dual enrollment as well with Piedmont. However, it will be very different in terms of the pathways that are offered there. The only pathway that I mentioned, the only pathway that I mentioned that will be a duplication for what else is happening in the district was the entrepreneur one.
And the student selection criteria, are they similar or?
That would be very similar. Those have been established. And let me ask, we have Paul Kamek here as well as Deanne Jonigan, who have worked with the petition, and they might want to address that at this point in time.
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson, board members. To answer your question, yes, we would use the similar process that's been used for other programs at this time.
Right, but in terms of criteria?
Yes, the selection criteria, yes, sir.
Same criteria?
Same
okay.
criteria.
Another question I have, and this has to do with the potential for matching, the requirement for matching funds. You mentioned earlier that the superintendent had set aside $1 million, I think, to support the construction, and one of the potential criteria for approval of a grant or the awarding of a grant is the potential for matching funds. Is that correct? The requirement of the district to provide matching funds?
That is not a requirement under this grant, sir.
Okay. Given the sort of the private sector components and the potential state and federal investments, how would you characterize the standards or the stakes for this charter meeting its annual performance vis-a-vis existing conversion charters? In other words, are the standards and stakes any higher or any different in your point of view in terms of meeting the goals that are set on an annual basis? Are they different from any of the existing conversion charters?
They're not, Mr. Mayfield. From this point on, starting this coming year, we're all going to be held, if you're a charter, conversion, or startup charter, you will be held to the same standard of CCRPI and beating the odds, which means that you have to not only meet state standards, but also beat state standards over a certain period of time.
Okay. And the next to the last question that I have, and this is focused on the specific goals themselves that you have listed on page 22. the goals are set against the first year, is that correct? The 5% goals, as opposed to an annual increase over the prior year? In other words, you have the way that the language is for the goals, for meeting the goals, is 5% above year one. And of course, as you play that out over 5 years, the actual rate of performance actually declines. Not that there's anything wrong with it, just wanted to make sure that was a clarification.
Goal, year one would be the baseline. Is that what you're asking?
No, I realize that year one would be the baseline, but the way that the goals are stated, it's saying that each of the successive or succeeding 4 years would be measured against or will have a goal of 5% of the first year and not 5% of the previous year. So there won't be sort of a rolling 5%. There would be just, each year would be compared against the first year.
That's correct.
Okay. And then final question, I guess, is the petition online so the public can see it?
Yes, sir. The petition is online.
Okay.
When you go to the charter school,
Okay.
and
Thank you.
it's available already.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Morley?
I was excited when I was reading the information about the College and Career Academy, and Mr. Thurmond, most certainly, and the administration, thank you all so very much. I think this most certainly is a real momentous occasion for the Cobb County schools and for the schools in the state of Georgia. And when you begin to look at the Bridge Initiative, you look at the Growth and Achievement Model, I mean, I could just read it all throughout here, but something that we've been talking about a long time, when you begin to look at an opportunity for class offerings for parents and community members that lead to industry, that's something unheard of. And so we're giving opportunities out here for people who might otherwise not have an opportunity to engage in education, but also to be a model for their children engaging in education. So I just think that this is a grand opportunity. I'm so glad that we are the ones spearheading this, and I want to say to my board members, but to the superintendent, thank you so very much, and to the administration, thank you all for being able to pull this grant together in such a short amount of time.
Mr. Orson?
Well, thank you. Hello, Dr. Boza.
Hey, sir.
How are you? I've got a couple of questions, a couple of comments for you. I want to make one observation because I think it's unset sort of under here. Just, it would have been helpful to have more time for us to review this. I don't know how else to say this. It's hard. It's a very extensive document. It's a great work product, but it's hard in 2 days to review a document of this magnitude. And I appreciate your pointing out kind of the short time frame between July 11th and now, but somehow I think just for us to be most effective and in being your partners in this process, I just have to say, 48 hours to read a 1,000-page document, my kids read that fast. I don't read that fast. So I just think as we go forward, if we can find a way, while we know the sort of general idea, to bring us in earlier, even if it's a work in progress, it might help us to be more effective, because that's one of some of the comments we're getting aren't necessarily about the merits of the idea. It's just about the time to review it. And I think to add, in your defense, that there's, on the flip side of this, because I've gone and looked at the state regulations and the technical college, there's an August 1st deadline with the state DOE, and so we're kind of getting sandwiched in here to get this so you can submit it to the state DOE. And I do want to point out for the public's sake that requires that the governing board having the local authorizer having approved charter status for it. The other part, trying to help you out here, is that the way these things are set up, if I read the regulations correctly, because it crossed my mind, why don't we just set up a college and career academy, that the legislation was written in a way to require that it have a charter status. And I think that's also important for everybody to understand. So that's kind of where we're all kind of wrapped up in here in a little ways, but I think it is important that we are also being driven by some state rules that dictate the format for this, but it also then has an impact on our ability to review it. So with that all said, I do have some large and smaller questions that I hope you can help us with. And they're no particular order. I noticed on the original board you have a board of 9 directors. One is a student, and I always encourage student participation, but as a matter, this is maybe for our legal counsel, can a minor actually serve on a board of directors? And I think council is going to have to clarify that, because if they're not of age a majority, they may not be able to do so under state law. So we may need a caveat in this thing. That's not to say we don't then find a mechanism, because I know that the technical college guidelines encourage student participation in this. I just want to make sure we are legally compliant. So, Mr. Ramsey?
You raise a good point, Mr. Orson. We will research that for you.
Okay. See, some are minor points. A minor point about minors. Second question, and this is just, again, because of the shortness of time to understand, because we're going to get questions. We have programs that are focused on particularly career at places like Cross Keys High School. How are those programs going to intertwine with this if it's established? What's our vision for how this all fits together? Because I think we need, besides the question about why McNair and not somewhere else, and I don't want to set up a beauty contest for picking locations, because I don't think that's productive, but I do think it's important that we have a vision for how existing programs, not just the early college academy, but on the career path, and not just kind of the single school-based ones, but the ones that are kind of career academies like North Tech that moved to Cross Keys. Can you give us just some talk about how this is all going to fit together?
I'm going to ask our two experts in that area.
Dr. Johnson, members of the board, Mr. Thurmond.
If you get closer to the mic so we can
Sure,
hear you.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Basically, there are no duplicated programs.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Paul Kamek, coordinator for CTAE.
Yeah.
Basically, we've set up a structure to serve the North and South County, and then have unduplicated programs at the McNair Center. So basically, we want to have all the north end of the county feed into those programs that are unduplicated, and I think that's the key word. They're just unduplicated programs.
So will you be able to, and I shared with Mr. Thurmond when I went on a tour of some of these college and career academies in the fall, and I'm happy to see that Megatronics is part of this. We talked about the fact that North Georgia College and Career Academy has a Megatronics program and leads to great employment opportunities at very high dollar wages, because there's a shortage of that kind of training. But in some of those programs, students travel in and then back to their home school.
That's correct.
So
Those are called cross-enrolled programs.
right.
And
So what is McNair?
there'll be a full-day program. They'll be enrolled at McNair High School.
So what if students, will there be any opportunities for students to travel in for limited purposes and back to their home school?
At this time, no. At this time, no.
Okay.
It's not in the grant proposal.
And then so students, if they're in McNair, and so they will be an enrollee of McNair High School, which is a certificated program for us.
That's correct.
If they want to take programs that are not available at McNair for part of what they want to do, will they be able to travel out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they'll be able to go to South
Okay.
and be cross-enrolled at the CAB Center South. And those are, half-day programs usually, and those are just considered extensions from the regular high schools.
So then, again, I'm just trying to get an understanding of this. So one of the questions, because there are two models. You can have a standalone school that has its own degree program, which is what it sounds like we're doing.
Right.
Or you have a program where you cross-enroll. Mm-hmm. Can you just walk us through a little bit about why the decision came down the way you're recommending to us? About a standalone school as opposed to a school where students travel in and cross-enroll.
It was basically based on, we looked at both models, but basically it's based on the amount of space that was available at McNair and the potential to serve more students.
Okay. Couple more, try to make them short. 8-12 model, so that caught my, having 8 through 12 as opposed to 9 through 12. And I want to preface comment because I understand sort of both sides. I always worry about that kids are kind of left on a shelf in some places, that they're 8, they get taken out of their traditional middle school. As an aside, I think we have some gaps in some areas too, where, for example, having elementary school of the arts that ends at 7, if you don't get into the DeKalb School of the Arts, you got to go find a middle school for 8th grade. I'm always worried about, I'm not adverse to a variety of models. I'm just trying to get an understanding why we chose for this 8 to 12 as opposed to 9 to 12.
We wanted the opportunity for students to accelerate or remediate as needed so that they could get into the dual enrolled programs as early as possible and be prepared for college level work. So if they come in as 8th graders and they're behind, we have that time to remediate, and if they're ahead, they can go ahead and
Is there going to be an
accelerate.
opportunity for kids who might want to finish their middle school experience at their middle school then to come in at 9th grade, or are we anticipating that all the slots would be taken up by people who came in 8th grade?
Well, we'd have to look into that. At this time, we were wanting the students to start in 8th grade and follow through their senior year.
Okay, I just want to encourage that thinking, because there are some kids, you know, particularly if they've gone through a feeder pattern where they've been with the elementary and middle school kids, that they may want to finish kind of at the natural grade, and that at least to look at whether we can provide opportunities for people to come in, meaningful opportunities, not just because somebody after 8th grade decided they didn't want to do it, so they went back.
And I think that's something that we can definitely consider.
Okay. Lastly, just to understand on sort of budget control, so as a startup charter, will, what? The conversion.
Conversion.
So will the budgetary, for some reason I thought I saw some reference in one of these pages to the word startup. That's why I thought it jumped out at me. I understand it. So we're going to convert McNair. There won't be any traditional program per se at McNair, or will this be housed within a McNair that's also a traditional program?
It will be both.
It will be
Okay.
both.
So it'll be an attendance zone school for kids who are on the traditional track, and then a conversion with its own school leadership and budget. Okay. Let me see if I have anything else. No, I think that's it. Thank you very much. As I've shared with the superintendent, I think these college and career academies are a great opportunity. And I encourage board members, if they get a chance, to visit some of these ones because as I know, as Mr. Thurmond pointed out, this will really be unique in terms of being an urban setting, but it is impressive some of the work they're doing out in our rural areas with some of these programs, and I think even as we get this started, it would help all of us to understand what the opportunities are in these schools. So thank you very much.
Mr. McMahon?
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Superintendent Thurmond, for bringing this to the board. I know you spent a lot of time and effort on this, and I look forward to this being one of the huge successes within our system. You've stated, as answering to Mr. Orson's question, that it'll be 2 schools on one campus, essentially? McNair traditional, and then career, and okay. And Dr. Boza, if you could walk me through, I see on the 300 kids expected for the Career Pathway Academy in 8th grade this first year, and then those would matriculate on, and we just keep restocking that 8th grade class.
That is correct, sir. And I'm going to go back a little bit just to Mr. Orson's previous question. Another advantage that is offered to the district by starting in 8th grade is that, first of all, CCRPI begins career awareness in the elementary level. Career exploration continues in the middle school level. If we want more students to complete pathways, multiple pathways, not just one pathways, then it's much better if you start in 8th grade than if you wait until you're in 9th grade. So it adds greater opportunities for them to be certified, industry certified in multiple areas versus just maybe one pathways that they're seeking.
The existing student, my question was for the existing students at McNair. There is no opportunity for them to participate, only your 8th graders in the middle school, right?
That is how it is planned right now. However, currently McNair has a very robust pathway, and
So this will be, and the traditional school will dissolve their existing pathways and have this taken over, or that will still be an addition to this?
It will be an addition to this. They have career pathways currently at McNair High School, and those would remain. They're unduplicated.
Right, and these are the non-duplicated
Exactly.
pathways.
Yes, exactly.
That those children, would they be able to, my point is they wouldn't participate in this.
No,
It's only those 8th grade students each year to
that-
enter into that.
at this time.
Okay.
Yes.
Explain to me, I'm sorry, real quick, automated lottery? Do we have software that just, you enter the names, and this is for the selection process?
I'm going to ask Ms. Copeland, and she's heading up here to talk. That is no different than our current process for selection.
That is correct. Currently, with all of our school choice options, we have an automated process where parents have the opportunity to go online to apply for different programs, and we use the data from that process to actually conduct our automated selections.
Okay, so it's a software program that, once everybody's in it, you hit start, and it spits them out, blink? Okay.
The students are selected through the automated process.
Thank you. My last question goes back to the board leadership. And just like Dr. Thurmond has done a wonderful job of including students on our board to have that experience and realize how beneficial what goes on. I do appreciate students being on this governing board. As I look down, and I noticed that the student rep was Miller Grove. Was there any request from the local community from McNair to participate in the governing body of this? I noticed there's no representation from anyone at the existing school, even though this is a different school. It's on that campus. And how did a Miller Grove student wind up? I appreciate the advocacy.
And actually, that was one of the student leaders, but that is something that we would definitely want a McNair student to be involved. At the time when this was being written, that was one of the student leaders who was serving at a center, so at a current center.
It was a student leader serving where? What?
That was attending DeKalb High School of Technology South and was already familiar with how
I get the connection now,
yes.
sure.
Yes.
Sure, okay, fantastic. Thank you for explaining that, and that's it for me. Thank you, Chair.
Dr. Irwin? I'm sorry, I missed you, Dr. Morley. After Dr. Irwin, Dr. Morley.
You want to go? You good? How you doing, Dr. Boza?
How are you, sir?
I had a couple questions about governance. So I'm reading about your staffing, and I noticed that you're going to have a hiring team, and the hiring team is only composed of board members that have expertise in HR. Why are not all of the board members included in those HR decisions? Well, it actually says HR and education expertise.
Yes.
Right.
That's what I was going to point out. We thought it was important that the board members have a background in HR and hiring policy and procedure and that educational piece, but we definitely can consider other options.
I was just curious as to, does that help facilitate consensus on the board?
We thought it would.
Okay. My other question is, as I look at the chart for your board members, see if I can find that page. Page 48. How many members on the board are actually voting board members? Like the superintendent's not voting, are you?
You want to address that?
What
Page
page are
48.
you referring to?
Yeah. 7, including?
7 if you don't include the student.
I
We're
can
going to
do
have, if you don't include the student and the superintendent is 7.
Is 7?
We're waiting on legal regarding the student.
Okay, I'm going to pick on Ms. Pierce real quick. So I noticed that Ms. Pierce is a community representative. In the document, it says that every year you add 2 community representatives, right? So who gets pulled from the board to make that second community representative? I'm just curious.
Yes, I think it is included in the bylaws. At this time, you're asking for a specific person
Not a
because that
specific
person hasn't
I
been
just want to
selected.
know the process of how do you add that additional person on? Because are you increasing the number of board members, or you're reducing one member and turn them into a community representative?
Oh,
That's my question.
I
Sorry.
got you. Actually, the term, they have a limited term, board members do. And so they would fall off after a certain amount of years. I think it was 3 years, but I'd have to refer
Yeah.
back to the document.
So that leads me to the same question. If they fall off every 3 years, it says every year 2 community representatives are put on the board. So I kind of need a little clarity on that. I know the initial board members get 1 year while in the planning phase,
Yes,
and thereafter is 3 years, and you break it up into 3 classes, and it's staggered over 3 years for each class, right?
yes. Oh,
But then
right.
towards the bottom, it says that every year you have 2 new members from the community that join the board. So it's kind of confusing with the time.
Okay, I think that's something logistically that we would need to take a look at.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Morley?
Thank you. Thank you all for the hard work they've done. I want to just remind my fellow board members that as a grant reader, the grants have stipulations. There are certain guidelines and certain things that have to be adhered to when you're putting a grant together. And so there are certain things that are in there that we might not understand, but we have these people who are experts at what they're doing, who are professionals, so they've got to make it be applicable to the people who are going to read it and approve it. And so that there are guidelines and stipulations that are there that say what this grant calls for and what must be in there. And it has to be to the T, because if it's not, there's a chance that it would not be approved. So I just want to remind us that as we go through this process and the questions, that there are guidelines. You don't just get a grant, as you all know. There's stipulations, the guidelines that have to be met that determines whether this grant is going to be awarded. And you want to be competitive. You want to be out there and making sure that you have the best model that there is. And to say that you're the first in the state in an urban district with a program like this, an academy, that says a lot in itself. And I think that makes us a lot more competitive.
Mr. Orson?
Couple of questions, going back to Dr. Irwin's question. So I'm trying to find how board members are subsequently selected. So you have your initial board in place. Who selects the subsequent board members after that initial one-year term is completed?
The board members.
So the board picks its own replacement?
Yeah, this is independent. That's the unique thing about career academies is that they have some independence because of their strong ties to the private sector. And it's a different concept from what we typically envision within a public school system. But the lifeblood and ultimate success of that is its independence once it's created.
Right, so I don't think it says in here anywhere, at least in my quick review, remember that whole 48-hour thing, of how subsequent board members are picked. I mean, it talked about the terms and the staggering, and I think Dr. Irwin's also been looking. It seems to be lacking the language, how you put it into effect, that the current board will select subsequent board members.
Yeah, part of the discussion we've had with the State Department of Technical and Adult Education and representatives from the Lieutenant Governor's office is that they wanted to leave some significant amount of discretion to this independent entity. To be quite honest with you, there is, among some circles, some distrust of public school systems who, mainly because they've been very cautious, if not negative, towards these career academies. And I just want to say something. It's no coincidence, I don't think, that there has not been a career academy established in an urban school district. That's not by happenstance. And this is a groundbreaking effort to bring more private sector involvement and to give the private sector the opportunity to direct the development and the education and training of a future workforce.
Right. No, this is the lawyer in me, which is simply, I think you need some language, Mr. Ramsey, that just talks about how subsequent board members are picked. It just seems, in the haste probably to get this, you just have to have a mechanism, otherwise by operational law, you'd be in a stalemate. You wouldn't be able to replace board members if you don't have language to how board, it's just some wordsmithing. Right. Because technically, you'd actually have to go to a court to get them to
Well,
assign
it
grants.
is a dynamic document.
Right. We just were both talking about it, trying to figure out to make
But
sure.
what we hope will occur is that the private sector members who become the initial board will have a lot more say-so and develop the details.
Right.
That will actually oversee and administer the operation of it. It will operate, and I'll be quite honest with you, a lot more different than anything that operates in terms of a school in DeKalb County currently.
Mr. McNair, who's next?
Thank you, Chair.
You finished? Did you finish, Dr. Okay, you finished. Mr. McNair?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick financial question. We have not received the grant, but we're applying for the grant. And I understand we've heard the water's fine, jump on in.
I wouldn't say that. We've heard that the money is available.
And I appreciate, and I get that, and I applaud the results of your administration, Superintendent Thurmond, raising additional funds, Wallace Grant, going after these monies. Worst case scenario, can we address that just for a second? If we don't get the grant, what's our liability?
There is no liability beyond the fact that the DeKalb County School District Board could, in the next fiscal year, appropriate the money to establish a career academy. This board has already set aside $1 million, and under its discretion and purview, it could, and first, the administration could recommend it in FY15 or 16, and the board, in its discretion, could appropriate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent.
Mr. Orson?
And just my reading, I think it's just the way the process is laid out. We have to have approved the charter in order to be able to actually fully pursue the grant, if I read it correctly, right? Because there's a September 14th date for the technical.
September 11th.
Or what?
11th.
Yeah, I was hoping it wasn't. I knew it was in that time. But my reading of it was you had to have approved the charter and submitted that to state DOE by August 1st. That gets you then into the grant process with the September 11th date. So it's part of this is dictated beyond us, if I understand.
And I'm certain that if we are fortunate enough to receive the grant, this will be revisited on more than one occasion because there has to be a budget developed and administrative oversight, all of that must occur. But first and foremost, we have to see if not we can receive the grant. And that's in a very tight window that's going to be determined in the next 30 to 45 days.
Dr. Morley?
Yes, I just want to reiterate again, I think that we are putting the cart before the horse and spending a lot of time. It's a grant. It's a response to a grant. And once that grant is approved, and we're hoping that it will be, I think that we need to begin to look at, as we have in the Bridge Initiative, and looking at the growth and achievement model, we're talking about helping students in an area that's disadvantaged. And it seems as if we're, beating this horse over the head before he even gets out of the stall, is that you have to respond to a grant. Everything is not in here, as the superintendent said, until that grant is approved. That's when the work begins to put it together. But as I said before, there is a process. We're not going to have everything in this document because it is a process. And so I think that we have to look at what are we here to do tonight to approve. We've lingered on this whole topic for ever and a day. And I know we have questions, that's great. But I think we have to remember it's a grant. It's not the actual program. When they start actually going into it and laying it out, that's when it's going to be really, really the questions and the rubber meets the road. But right now it's a response to a grant. And it's that response that has to be met by federal, state guidelines that you have to begin to look at. And so we'll have time as a board to be able to ask those questions, but we've got to also trust the administration and the superintendent that whatever that grant is calling for, that those things are there. This is a framework in a sense, so that it can get approval to say this district, this system knows what it's doing, and they are people who deserve to have this kind of money behind the government, giving them that money. So that's all they're saying. It's not the actual program. There's going to be work that has to be done on this to put it together once approved.
Mr. Mayfield?
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification. This is actually a charter petition that we're voting on, not the grant itself. The grant is contingent on the charter being approved.
That's correct.
Correct.
Mr.
No,
Chair,
I'm
if I
sorry.
may, if board has spoken, the reality of this is that we are trying, after decades of inertia, frankly, to reach a segment and a strata of our students that we have failed horribly as a district. And from the data and my own personal experiences that I've gained in terms of not just pathways, but the Career Academy movement, this will offer our students multiple pathways to success. And as I look at the data, graduation rates that you all I know are very concerned with, I look at the data in terms of growth and achievement. Part of that is our inability to offer students something that they would gravitate towards and be entranced and enthralled by in terms of offering. Many of our kids drop out of school not because they're not smart. Many of them are just bored. We're not offering them what they are interested in. And so this may be a once-in-a-generation opportunity for DeKalb County. It's on a short fuse. We apologize for that, but it was offered. We worked on it and discussed it last year, and we did. We submitted a grant last year, actually, and the State Department of Technical and Adult Education awarded us a $50,000 planning grant. We didn't hear anything else. We wasn't sure whether or not this would be funded again. We received notice on the 11th that it was, but it has a tight window. And I'm encouraging the board to give us this opportunity to at least seek the funding. And I believe that given the opportunity, we might be successful. And this might be the last chance I ever have to try to be successful, to offer these students this opportunity. And it would just be very disappointing for us as a district, I think, not to at least try, because if we don't do this, we really don't have anything else to offer a group of kids that we, quite frankly, hadn't offered enough.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. At this time, I call for the vote. It passes 7-0. I want to personally take this opportunity to express to staff as well as the board. This board and the superintendent and staff, we work in a collaborative fashion, and this is a clear indication with a short window how we all have to adjust our time and talent in terms of not only writing the petition, but reading the petition and developing all of the elements and the component parts of the petition. But it clearly states and shows that this board and this superintendent works in a collaborative way to get the job done. And I want to thank you very much.
I want to